Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tosh Customs, and today we'll be looking at my Cyberpunk Twins set. This was definitely one of the bigger projects, or biggest projects I've ever done in terms of creating a whole lineup of figures. And I'm really excited about this. I think it turned out great, and I'm super excited to break it down for you guys. I'm so sorry that it's been a long time since we've had a review. I have been swamped with school, but we are coming up towards the end of the year, so I'll have a little bit more time over my break to film stuff. So as I'm completing my next few projects, you can definitely expect reviews for those, which I am super stoked about because I miss filming this kind of stuff for you guys, and I miss breaking down the customs I'm making. So without further ado, we will get into this review, starting with the accessories. And so I am just going to pop off the heads of these two, and then we'll go over everything down here. 1 and 2. Okay. That head won't look straight at us because of the hair. Alright, so let's dive into the accessories. It's been a while since I filmed a review, so I think we normally start with the hands, so we'll cover those first. For the female twin, she is on a Catwoman body, but we are using the Captain Marvel hands from the Captain Marvel Mezco. So the hands have been fully repainted. On her left hand specifically, she has a metal hand, so the fingers have been chromed out. And then the actual glove part has been repainted in a gloss black, as you can see there. Turned out very clean. I'm very happy with it. And that is consistent on all the left hands, as you can see there. And then on the right hands, it's just the original skin tone, because the original skin tone is really nice. And so we just opted to leave it. So that's that for the females twins hands. I wish we had names for them, but we haven't come up with anything. So that's for the female. For the male, we used the Gambit base figure, and the Gambit hands were enough, but we did change them up a little bit. But normally, if you know the figure, let me get that camera to focus. This is like an all gray section. That's the best way to put it. All the ribbing detail is all gray. You can see it and you can appreciate it, but we were like, his color scheme is partially white, so we turned the ribbing white with like the highlights of the gray, so that it lightens up the overall color scheme of the hand and makes it pop a little more. It's not a huge change overall, but the gloves were really nice as is, and so we just needed it to fit the color scheme of the character, and I think that turned out really well. So that's the basic overview of the hands. There's not much to go over. So then we're going to move to accessories in terms of the weapons. So for the male twin, he wields these dual swords. These were 3D custom prints by DTG Figures. You can find him on Instagram. He does have a website. I believe as of this review, he just recently restocked his site and added some new stuff for sale. So definitely support your other creators out there. Give him business. I hope one day I'll be able to 3D print and make my own accessories, but these are dope, and so I had to get my hands on them just because I loved how they looked, and it just turns out that they were going to be great for this character, so we ended up using them here. So these look great. The handles have been painted in a chrome silver, and then the grips have been done in a nice red, so we have that. The male twin also has this little knife. It almost looks like a super long box cutter, and I just love that. It feels just slightly industrial. Yeah, let me get the camera to focus. There's some really nice layering on this blade in terms of there's that serrated edge, and then you can see how the blade, attaches into a metal bit, which then attaches into what I assume is to be like a harder rubber or harder plastic handle. Some sort of grip. So I just like how detailed it is. So that's pretty cool too. So he has his knife. Moving on to the female set of accessories. She dual wields these hatchets. These are from the Red Ninja from the G.I. Joe. figure line, the new 6-inch one that Hasbro has been putting out recently. Didn't do too much to these. I sprayed them chrome and gave them this nice fade right around that transition area, as you can see there. And then what I did was I actually took a cloth. Sorry for the camera shaking. I'm just trying to get it to focus. It's not doing too well on that for some reason. But then what I did was I actually rubbed a cloth over it. And so some of the highlight areas got some wear and tear along the edge of the blade, sort of along the different angles. And that just gives it a little bit more of a worn look. And I like that because I imagine, you know, even though she has this paint job, she's knocking heads. She's been around the block, you know. They're assassins. So why not have the weapons a little beat up? Now we come to the female twins' interchangeable weapons for her left arm. As we talked about earlier, she has a robot hand, so she also has robotic weapons to switch in and out. The first one is this blaster. I forgot where I got this part. It was a pistol from something. I almost want to say a Marvel Select, like Gamora figure or some old Toy Biz, something. But I've had it for so long that I genuinely forgot where it's from. And I also want to say I got it from like a weapons lot off eBay, which doesn't help sourcing parts. But that's where I think it's from. I cut off the trigger and grip of it, smoothed it all down. Obviously, it got fully repainted. And then we drilled a tiny little hole in there and fit it to the peg on the wrist. The best way to do that is to drill a hole larger than the peg. And then what I do is I put sculpt in there. And then I press the peg in. And then once the peg is pressed in, I remove it and then I let it harden. And that's usually good enough to create a grip that'll hold onto the wrist peg. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. You may have to, you know, go back for a second or third visit and rework it, but that's what I did. You can, if you want to, reinforce it with super glue on the inside just to make sure that your sculpt on the inside over time doesn't degrade as you switch the parts in and out. But honestly, that shouldn't be too much of an issue, but that might be something to look out for depending on, your wear and tear on it. But I've switched this hand in and out quite a bit over my time working with the figures, and I haven't had run into any issues. So I think in terms of quality control, I'm perfectly fine with this. Same idea, but we have a blade, more blades, and I like this. I don't know why. I have a thing about hand blades just in general. Any blades coming out of the arm and stuff just is dope to me. So we have this one for the female twin. I like this just because it gives her a little bit of a longer ranged melee weapon. We sculpted the edge of the grip right there in gloss black just so it fits the aesthetic, and then obviously the blade is in chrome. And then we have our little focus. We have our little connection port right there. It's unpainted just because it was rubbing up against the wrist peg as I switched it in and out, and so it's like there's no point in trying to paint this. It's going to get a little scratchy anyways, and because it's facing into the wrist peg, you never see it, so it's not really a big issue. This one was a little bit more interesting because obviously, unlike the gun where I had a frame to drill into, this I did not. So what I actually ended up doing is making this whole piece right here. So I had my blade, and then I had this big glob of sculpt at the end of it. It was just pretty much this big ball. And then I pressed the wrist peg into it and just sort of squeezed down the top and sides of, the connector port, I guess, so that it would fill up around the wrist peg. And then I let that harden, and then afterwards I actually cut it off and jimmied it off. So that was a little bit more risky because you do play the risk of damaging your wrist peg and having anything like epoxy putty harden and cure over an existing plastic bit. I was able to get mine off, thank goodness, because I don't have any more spare wrist pegs for that body type. So we got a little bit lucky, so you can do it. Obviously it's doable, but definitely proceed with caution if you want to do something like this. But it worked, and that's what matters. So we've gone over the hands and weapons. We will now turn to we're going to turn to the hounds real quick. So I'm going to get my camera to focus out here. There we go. We have our two beautiful, beautiful hounds. These are from the NECA Terminator RoboCop crossover 2-pack. And obviously I had to buy two of these. I bought two of them off of eBay because I wasn't going to buy the packs just for the dogs. So I got these off of eBay. I think I found each for $25. So yeah, $50 total. It's a little bit of an investment, but honestly, these turned out great and I wouldn't have it any other way. The whole idea behind the twins was this yin-yang sort of opposite sides dynamic. You know, they're brother and sister. They have two dogs, opposite colors. They wear primary colors that are different also. In terms of the brother wears white, the sister wears black. So there's just a lot going on there. Yeah, I just enjoyed the dichotomy of designing, you know, two things to complement each other. So with that, obviously the dogs follow that same color scheme. If you have ever owned the NECA Terminator RoboCop dog, we're just going to call it the Hound. If you've ever owned one of these hounds, you know that they come in just sort of like a faded silver. And so what I ended up doing was actually sitting for a long time and just identifying like what joints are internals and then what plating on this whole guy is externals. You know, what is armor and then what is more joint and function related. And so once I plotted all that out on the body, I was able to paint up all the armor and then paint everything else chrome silver. And I know you're like, well, that doesn't look very bright like chrome silver. I ended up dirtying it afterwards. So basically my process was I sprayed black on most of like the armor bits, or I dry brushed black on most of the armor bits. I'll be honest, it's a little bit now, so I don't remember. But then I painted chrome on the rest of everything else. And then once I had the chrome, I went over it with some gunmetal and just wore it down just to give it that grimier look, to get that gunmetal into the cracks of everything so that, you know, it's a brighter silver, but it's not all too shiny. The eyes were red before. I painted them actually a different shade of red so that they're a little bit brighter. They got hit with gloss. And then in sort of all the deep crack areas for this black hound, there's some gloss black sitting in there that you can see. Cool. So that's the basic overview. We dropped some red, just before I go, dropped some red, the same color as the eyes, into some of the deeper cracks, and then also hit some of these like hydraulic pumps and stuff around the body in yellow. And obviously I didn't do all of them. I sort of went, what are my primary ones and what are my secondary ones? I don't know. I was just asking myself questions, what seemed to look good, what seemed to work. So that's what I ended up with. Moving on to the white hound, the idea is the same, except obviously the hound is in white, and white is much harder to paint than black. So my paint process was slightly different. I for sure sprayed the whole figure white, and then I had to go back and go, okay, so where's my silver? What gets, you know, or what has to be painted chrome. Once I painted everything chrome, this figure was incredibly bright, almost to a fault because you couldn't appreciate all the deep cracks and stuff. So then what I did was I thinned out gunmetal to where it almost had a watery consistency, dabbed gunmetal into all the cracks, you know, all the little cracks and crevices on the head, on the paneling, you know, just, yeah, pretty much this whole thing got dipped in gunmetal. And then I took a towel and then just swiped it off off the top, so that the surface got some nice, you know, darkening and weathering. It will zoom in here. As you can see, there's definitely almost like a water staining effect, like right up top there, and right there too. So that was pretty nice. But then also having the gunmetal get into all the cracks and bringing out stuff like the bolts and, you know, some of the edges and deeper areas. So that was really important to bring out. Otherwise, it got hit with the same red, the same yellow. for the highlights. And then I also went over and just dry brushed a little bit of silver, not chrome, but silver specifically, just to bring out some of the edges of the armor, because white, for some reason, blended a lot of the edges together. And so just had to bring that out a little bit more. So there you have it. I'm very happy about how these hounds turned out. We're just going to put them off to the side. So now let's take a look at our final set of like accessories, which will be our heads. We'll start with the female first. She has 2 custom sculpted heads, custom sculpted of, I guess, different values. We're going to go over this head first. This, obviously, we're using the Catwoman base figure. So this was the Selena Kyle head. She has an entire face mask sculpted over, and I think it turned out really, really well, really, really smooth. So obviously there's the visor. We have the red highlight inside hit with some gloss. And then we also have her like rebreather mask here. You'll see once we get to the male figure that I was using a lot of these little gas tanks. If you're wondering where I got these from, these are actually arrow heads or like arrow tips from this old like 2002 Lord of the Rings figure that I picked up a long time ago for a commission, and we didn't need the arrows. So I've had this stack of arrows sitting on my desk or like in this little junk pile for the longest time, and so I was like, you know, I could cut off the heads of the arrows and they look like little gas canisters or little air filters. So that's what we went with. So this is her head. I think it turned out really great. We have some gunmetal here and also some gunmetal on the front mask part. And then we have, you know, like bright chromed out silver for the gas tanks. And then her hair, I hand painted it all gloss black because I just like the gloss black. I don't know why. It adds fun depth to the hair. And something I've been noticing about gloss black recently is that it bends light, and I've been trying to use that in really creative ways. If I have time, I'll do a review on my God Killer Batman. And I did gloss black just around like the inner parts of his eyes, and it really breaks down the definition for his cowl, which is really cool. That might sound a little hard to explain off the top, but anyways, the point being, when you have gloss black, it both accentuates the details above and also hides the details below. And so I liked that because, especially with like shorter hair and just hair in general, if you see every single strand, it looks really cool and detailed, and at the same time, it feels a little busy. And so when you're dry brushing over it with all those little strand details, like what Mezco does, the busyness starts to work against it. It feels really cluttered, and sometimes the transition of colors and stuff doesn't feel smooth. So I was like, you know, how do I create a nice ombre fade in the hair and help myself out? Well, I glossed under it, and then I dry brushed over it, and that gloss just bends the light enough to where the transition of color feels a lot nicer than maybe it is. I think I did a pretty good job fading, dry brushing in general, but the gloss definitely helps that out. And so there are some very creative, useful times to use gloss, not only just for, you know, style or denoting depth, but also just to create unique paint jobs. And so I definitely think I achieved that there. Moving to the second female head. This head was the X-23 Marvel Legends head. Obviously, been heavily redone. So, obviously she normally has like her mask underneath. There are a couple big things I needed to do. One, create, you know, this 6-eye faceplate. The second thing then was I need to fade the hair from up here into this faceplate. Because, so think about this. Her hair normally sits like above and past her forehead, you know, like normal hair does in general. But now you add a faceplate on there, and then you go, okay, now this is sitting past the hair and it doesn't look natural anymore. So what do? So to make that, to make these, sculpting this implant looks like it actually belongs on the face, what I did was I removed the hair. I just, it's popped off. I popped it off. It's a two-part thing. I sculpted this whole eye faceplate first. Then I reconnected the hair back on and shaved away some of the faceplate to make room for the hair. Pasted the hair back down, and then actually sculpted new bits of hair. So this whole length down here, run down here, is one thing I sculpted. I sculpted a second one that just runs across there, and then there's a third one that runs across here and down. It's hard to tell if you guys can see that. There we go. It runs across here and then runs sort of under this long strand, and you can see it comes down towards the ear. So we sculpted those three bits, and that allows the top hair to just flow around the eye implant mask area to make it feel like this is really, sort of indented into the face and belongs on the head. So it worked out really, really well. Obviously, if you have too thick a layer of something up here, no matter how much hair sculpting you do, it's just going to look awkward because it's going to come out of the face too much. But I think I kept my layering down enough to where sculpting the new hair feels very natural. So that was just the step process to, how do you sculpt something and make it hide and feel like it fits within the face. So that was my process there. Obviously, everything's been redone. Totally new skin tone. She's got some bright red lipstick there. Pearly whites. This was painted in a matte black with then a gunmetal dry brush over it, and then obviously dotted the red eyes and then hit it with some gloss. The hair, similar to the other female twin head, is done in a gloss black. Oops, whoa, jeez. There we go. It's done in a gloss black. And then what I did was I actually mixed a black, gray, and blue together. And then that's what we dry brushed the hair with, just to get those highlights to stand out. And once again, in certain light, like right there, you can really see the highlights. But, as you're just sort of panning over it, it's a little bit harder to tell. And that's the whole point of the gloss bending the light, is that, it adds sort of this unsaid amount of depth, like we talked about earlier, and it also makes the edges less busy. So that really helps with the hair overall, and I think it looks dope. So those are the female heads out of the way. Let's move to the male heads. This is our first head. I called this my rocker boy head, just because he has like his little red headband and stuff like that. So, once again, we're using the Gambit head sculpts. And I loved the Gambit eyes. I love that black with the like pinkish, pupil, iris, something like that. Some part of the eye, it's colored. I really liked it. And so I didn't want to change that because I thought eye implants are super dope. And so the fact that he went with a very, very unnatural eye color is sick. So then my next question is then, how do I transform Gambit's face? Because Gambit's face is so Gambit. And that's something that me and the customer were struggling to figure out. Gambit's hair is a large part of that, one. And then Gambit's mask is a large part of that, two. So obviously the first thing we did is we just peeled off that hair, fully sculpted new head, and I gotta say I'm very, very proud of the results of this hair sculpt. I think it looks incredibly smooth, and I think it looks incredibly natural just in terms of how the hair falls and just layers over each other. Both of these male head sculpts, like the female head sculpts was more faceplate stuff, the male head sculpts was much more hair stuff. And I think I spent 3 individual sessions of sculpting and then waiting for it to cure to get the layers on this hair done right. And that's not because it was 3 tries or 2 tries where I got it wrong and 1 where I got it right, but actually I had to do this in sections in terms of, what sits under what. So like the sides of the hair came first, and then I did, some top upper layers and some back layers after to get it all looking right. He also has this, eye patch or like eyepiece, not necessarily eye patch, but an eyepiece. And then we also sculpted this whole gas mask or, little face mask up top. And I got all that little rebreather filter type detail right in the front there, and I'm super, super happy about that. So then, we covered the hair. The hair doesn't look Gambit anymore. Now what do we do with the face? Obviously we have the eyepiece, obviously we have the faceplate, and then, it's a matter of making different things on the initial head sculpt stand out. So if you own the figure, this whole like little faceplate thing is all just like a gloss black and whatever. Repainted it matte black, and then I highlighted that outer edge and then turned that into a headband that runs around the front. And so this obviously breaks up the face to the hair area and adds some style to it, which is really nice. And then having those gloss black highlights along the sides just makes the layering feel different. And that's all you really need. You just need to make the character look less like itself, and then it becomes a whole new entity if you do enough, color and design changes. And that sounds cheap when I say it like that, but I mean, it's really some key core design, concepts and elements, especially when, you're applying it here and, making a completely new character out of something that exists already, or you're using a base frame. So yeah, I think he looks totally different. I think you could put this up on display next to the Gambit head. And, besides that little framing on the side, it'd be really hard to tell it was Gambit. Moving to this head now. Obviously, we show more of the face. I liked this head because he has this smirk. And I was like, I want to keep that facial expression. I liked the eye. I liked the smirk. This adds personality. This head here, clearly a very serious, angry character. And even this mask looks straight down to business. Our male twin, on the other hand, he's a little bit more stylish. I think his hair, I think his head sculpts, I think just the little design cues that I make for him make him feel a little less aggressive and a little more stylish. And that's what I was going for. Once again, dichotomy, difference, but, still the same. It balances each other out. So the sister has a very aggressive, almost military feel. The brother feels a lot more stylish. And when I was talking with the customer, I think I compared him to a race car. He felt very much like a race car to me, very sleek. But anyways, let's get back to this head. So I wanted to do a couple things. I wanted to keep, in making two different heads, very, very, just like the other character, very two unique head sculpts. I wanted to keep the main themes of the character the same. So he's covering his eye in this head. He's gonna cover his eye again on this head. So how do we make it feel different? Obviously, I just can't do another eyepiece, another eye implant, whatever. That's been done. So instead I went, he's lost his eye. We're gonna do this nice little eye patch covering thing running over his eye there. Then, we've redone the hair. This one also, I think this one might have taken 4 individual head sculpt sessions just to get the hair to fall right and to layer right. I'm super happy with this one. We used a little bit more blue than black gray on this one, and I think it turned out well. Once again, he's a stylish dude. He goes for the cool colors. And then once again, how to make him not feel like Gambit. We closed up this chin with a chin strap here, and it's cool because that chin strap runs all the way up to the sides of the face, like little faceplate helmet area. So he's got all that going for him. I think that made enough difference. And then, just to make this head a little bit more unique, we installed a magnet on the underside of the jaw there. And so, we have a new magnetic mask for him. And, let's see if the light can catch his eye in there. Maybe it can, maybe it can't. I don't know. It's going to be a little hard to tell. In the right lighting, you can just see his eye peeking through that little hole. You can kind of see it right now. I need to get lights for this light box. But anyways, yeah. He has a magnetic faceplate. It sits right up against that bandage, which is really cool. I had to cut it to be flush and to just sort of line up with his head overall. So we have that. Obviously, we have that gas mask again. And then, I was sitting here looking at this mask, and I was just like, what will make it unique? Obviously, it makes room for the bandage, but then I was like, well, if he has a bandage, if he's been injured on the side, what if his mask has been actually cut? So we have sort of this little bloody streak, cut across the faceplate, to make it, I don't know, feel broken. Very clearly we got some rough, jagged edges along this faceplate. It is not what it used to be, and I think that's really cool. Another fun thing to note is that this is was the Crossbones helmet from the MCU Captain America, I think, Civil War 2 pack. So yeah, I actually had to cut the whole face mask off the head, and then, just make little adjustments so that it would fit the head here. So some very cool stuff. Just super fun to paint overall. I think it fits his character very much, and I'll be posting photos on Instagram of, all the different heads and combos of weapons and stuff on my Instagram, and so you'll be able to see that faceplate in action, and I love it. We are now going to come back to the bodies, and this video is really long, so thank you for whoever's sticking through and who's actually interested in this. I'll be doing an overview of the bodies quickly, and then we'll get out of here. So, we're going to start with the female here. I put on the little 6-eye head, and let's talk about it. So, she's wearing the Catwoman suit. With the Catwoman suit, I didn't want to make too many changes. I liked how sleek the suit was, but I had to, make the character come into her own. So, oh yeah, those knives are removable. I am including the Catwoman hands back with this figure, and the Catwoman hands can hold these. It just wasn't important for the review, but yeah, that's why those little knives are there. And those are from Diabolic. So, how to make the character feel less like Catwoman? Well, I loved the sleek bodysuit. The bodysuit was staying for sure. She's an assassin. I wanted her to feel fast and deadly. And style definitely plays a part. She is not without her style. She's got this cool eyepiece, and then clearly by her costume, she plays off of almost like a lingerie-esque look there, with the leg straps and everything. And then obviously, I had to find a way. I was almost asking myself, like, what is sexy, but what is also functional? There is, if you have too much of one, it looks like some weird anime stuff, and I have nothing against anime, but that is not what we're going for here. And if I make it too functional, it looks too military, and military feels heavy most of the time. So I had to figure out light and stylish and, but also something that wouldn't get in the way. So, I did give her heels just because Catwoman's flat feet actually made her feel extremely short. And so just getting this extra, like, ½ inch or a couple centimeters, I don't really know how much taller this makes, but her feet are relatively flat overall. Like, the Catwoman original feet are relatively flat. So this gives her a significant amount of height, and that just boosts her up and makes her a little bit taller and a little bit more intimidating. Definitely feels like she could look down on some people now. So that was really cool, and I think it's cool with the high heel boot. Obviously, there's some stability issues there, just in terms of, how does she run and whatnot. But cyborgs, they can do it. So, come up here, just made a little bit of a, I don't even know what to call this thing. But it's there, just a covering, mid-chest, breast area. And the reason why I did that is for two things. One, if it's just the plain Catwoman suit, it's just lazy. Two, I needed something to break up the suit. We used these straps down here to break up the suit, and then I needed something up top. So we used this fabric piece here, and then we also used the shoulder pad. And that just helps create layers and add more complexity to the suit. Undersuits are cool, but if you have nothing over it, it just looks like pajamas, and that's what Catwoman looked like, honestly. So we have that. This shoulder pad, I believe it's from the, pardon my language, I think we have to keep on saying this, but I think it's from the Kick-Ass Armored character from KA2, the movie. It's been worn down. Obviously, we have a lot of metal burn on it. It got painted red, and then it also got glossed over, and that, we've seen a lot of gloss red in the review so far, and we'll see a lot more on the male character. But I needed something, location-wise is important, it's on the right shoulder, but then also in that color. And then the only other standout thing is coming down to the arm here. This was a Halo arm guard, or gauntlet piece, I guess, from one of those old McFarlane Halo figures. So I pulled the arm off, cut down and hollowed everything out internally, and then also cut down on the Catwoman sleeve a little bit, and then glued the Catwoman sleeve to the inside of the arm, and then slipped the whole thing over. A little complicated, but it all worked out in the end, and it looks great. The arm guard is done in a gloss black, whereas the suit feels a little bit more like a semi-gloss. And that's just important because, you know, when you're looking at it as a whole, we get, sorry, I'm working with a new stand, and so it makes the camera a little shaky sometimes when I touch it. But the important part, you know, when I was talking about breaking up a suit is texture and actual color. Everything is black here, obviously, because, you know, we're working with that yin-yang color scheme. But we get this super high gloss black in the boots. We get sort of a semi-gloss, you know, obviously texture is an important thing too, you know, very, let's see if I can zoom or focus without making the camera shake. There we go. We get this, you know, very, very high detail, high texture undersuit. Then we come to more of these elastic strap bits. Obviously, these are much more matte than the suit is, and the texture also breaks up the overall bodysuit. We run up a little bit more. We come up to whatever this section is. I don't have a technical term for it. But once again, color and texture change again. This feels a lot deeper and darker of a black, if that's a thing, compared to the suit. And then we also get the shoulder pad coming in here to break up the composition on the right side, and then to balance that out so the character doesn't feel lopsided in terms of arm or anything. We have this other arm, once again in a gloss black with then some metal, which breaks up and, you know, adds some different texture and coloring compared to the undersuit. So, you know, there is a rhyme and reason to everything why we chose to place things where they were, and so that's important there. And so now we come to the male twin, and you've seen the head already, so I'm just going to focus on the body and just stand him up here. He looks like a race car. I enjoyed making this guy. I enjoyed both, but, you know, obviously we were playing with the fact that he is like the stylish one of the two, and I think it definitely shows. So we're on the Gambit body, and there are some issues we have to overcome. If you've owned the Gambit body and you've taken off the armor, you realize that this dude has the most Dorito body ever. He has these insanely wide shoulders, and then he's got this little itty-bitty waist. I mean, he's like a size 0 waist with, you know, shoulders of a bodybuilder. And it's really weird. I had some people tell me when I first started making him, like, no, the proportions are the same as the Blade figure or whatever. They are most definitely not. This guy has wide shoulders. And I can't explain it. I don't know why they went with that, besides the fact that they needed a slimmer torso to add the armor on. But yeah, just very, very strange. So how do we remedy that? One, we add the coat. The coat hides the inner torso and also hides like the actual width of the shoulders while still making him look intimidating. So that helped. Two, you know, both to help with the waist and to also make him feel less like Gambit, we don't keep the armor around all the sides. We sort of make that ambiguous space in there, you know, with the coat and everything else. And because we don't have the armor there anymore, it brings the eye focus elsewhere. And so just sort of, you know, using that to distract from the fact that this dude has a very, very slim waist. So we took the Gambit armor. I actually took all the Gambit armor off and then decided where I wanted my cuts to be. And then I actually had to, you know, just with an X-Acto knife, cut all the armor off around the sides and the back. And so that left us with this very, very cool chest and torso piece. And what I like about it is it does offer him a little bit more flexibility. He still does not have much bend, but I realized that bend is actually, some people were saying it might be because of the armor, I think when initial reviews came out. That is just because the body has little articulation, but I will say, and it's going to be hard to see on the video, but he does get more bend in there. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. I know it's hard to see, but I was working with this guy and he had even less before. He's able to crouch forward a little bit more because he doesn't have hard plastic, just framing his entire torso. So that worked out. Obviously, this stuff got painted white, and then, similar to the issue I had with the Hound earlier, white, you lose all the details with white. So I was like, how do I bring the details back? So I did two things. The first one was I dry brushed it with chrome silver over the top of things, just to bring the highlights out a little bit more. And I think if you're looking at the white, you can even tell that just the base coat is already metallic. And that's because I mixed it with a very bright, like silverish ink. And so it just adds a little bit of shine, and you can see it inside the legs too. There's a little bit more shine to them along with the white. So then there's also some dry brushed chrome. And then I actually took black and ran black through the cracks of the armor. And that's what gives it its definition. And then sprayed it once again with another top coat of like white and silver. And that's what makes the black fade away. It's a little less stark, and so it looks a lot just more like deep shadow, which turned out really, really well. Really quick, since we're at the chest piece, on the right side, red. On the female, on the right side, red. I was looking for little tiny design elements to make them feel like they are together, because they are very different vibey figures. And so, what are ways to make them work? That was one of them. Coming up to the top of Gambit, his armor is very unique. So I was like, how do I make it feel different? So I hit the collar with a chrome silver, and then this got painted all matte black, and then I actually hit the upper edges with a gloss black, and that turned out really well. It adds some cool design stuff, but I think it feels relatively different when you're looking at him. I don't think he looks very much like Gambit. Coming down to the belt, we used a Sovereign Knight belt. There's a lot of details in there. The whole belt got painted gloss black, and then dry brushed black gray inside like the little strap areas. And so you have this black gray over this gloss black within the cracks, and I think that turned out great. And then the pouches got dry brushed in a silver on all of them to bring out, the outer details. And then the front of the belt got hit with red. And I love that just little arrow logo looking thing. Super fun. He needed a belt for two reasons. One, it helps disguise the fact that the armor just stops right there. The armor just stops. And so it's like, well, if the armor stops, there has to be something there. So we have a belt there for that reason. Two, once again, it helps with the illusion of the waist. The waist is very small, and it's very, very tight right around here. And so because of that, having the belt brings out the overall waist length and just, I guess radius, whatever, overall. And so that was important to also help with the illusion. So we use the belt. The belt also plays a good part because we can slot in our swords on this end. And then, that's just an attachment point for that. We also have, since we're talking about weapon holding, his knife also fits in here. And I did a cool thing with the knife. So, I'll explain it right now. It's going to be hard to see on the camera, but I'm going to do my best to show you by slotting the knife in. This little knife holder is not just a band that runs around the leg. That would be stupid. What I was realizing with elastic is that if you just do a single band of elastic around the leg and you just slot a knife through, the elastic is going to pull the blade and sort of bend it to the contour of the leg. And I didn't want that to happen, especially with a 3D printed part that has, it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit of a harder plastic. So what we did was, you can see in there, you can see how there's that split. That's because there's actually, this is a double layered elastic band just around the area where the knife is going to be. So there's a second piece of elastic that actually sits under the initial band, so that when you slide the knife through, the knife is being held between two pieces of elastic instead of the knife being pushed against the hard plastic of the leg. And so that's just a little bit of an innovative thing just to keep the knife on straight. And so that was pretty cool. The swords just slip in. The swords just slip in here. There are photos of that, so I don't need to go over it. We're going to keep on talking about design stuff. Real quick, if you're trying to source this coat, I believe it is from the Dante, from the Devil May Cry figure line. I don't remember what company makes it, but I'm sure you could search up 1/12 Dante and you'll find it. So this is his coat. It's normally maroon. We painted it, we spray painted it all white, and we used Angelus leather paint That's super important. It's a very soft, flexible acrylic paint, which is really important when you're working with fabric. And then obviously we sprayed in this fade between the black to the white, which I think turned out great. Coming to the arms now. Gambit normally just has wrist braces. I was like, we have to do something different. We have to, once again, make him feel, excuse me, not like Gambit. So I had these spare samurai armor from the Articulated Icons series. And so I cut off the inner band to them so that they had a little bit more flex room on the outside, left the inner connector strap there, and then they just got repainted. You know, our color scheme for this guy is very clearly white, black, and red. Ooh, that camera focus. White, black, and red. So to break up the monotony of it and also match the gloves, this is done in a gloss black compared to a matte black, and then we have our red straps through it. You've seen the hands, so we're going to move to the pants. There was originally a thought just to leave Gambit's legs the way Gambit's legs were, but that is too Gambit. So what I ended up doing is actually removing the knee pads, and then tucking these pants, which are actually from the Deathstroke Mezco figure. I have a bunch of spare bodies of those laying around. So cut the pants off, adhered it to the belt, if I remember correctly. It's been a little while, but I adhered it to the belt so that it stays there, and then adhered it to the insides of the legs. And so now he has these nice pants that hide all the old Gambit detailing and line work and stuff, which, you know, oh, we miss out on the line work. But once again, it helps the character feel different. And then we come down to the boots. Obviously, they got hit with that same metallic white as before. And then on the areas that aren't metallic white, that are much more fabric-y, we have this gloss black band that runs around the armor there. And then just a lot of little, you know, little details. This has all been done with some added warren of chrome silver. You can see it just sort of along that edge, and just all over it just sort of speckles the leg. So that was really important because, once again, bringing out the details in white. I think if there's a takeaway, white mutes details. You have to find ways to add details in paint. So we did that, and I think it turned out wonderfully. That is really it for this review. That has been a very, very comprehensive video for my Cyberpunk twin figures. I'm just putting the female back on her stand. She can stand on her own, but obviously she has smaller points of balance or whatever. Her feet are smaller, so it's a little bit harder for her to stand sometimes, so I just use a stand for this review. Anyways, that is the review. Here they are all back out in their glory. The hounds are not looking at the camera. Let's make them look at the camera. So thank you for watching. This is obviously one of my longer reviews. We covered 4 characters. That considered, I think we did pretty well on time. What do I need to say at the end of a video? It's been a while since I filmed one. I am Tosh Customs once again. You can find me on Instagram at Tosh_customs. If you enjoyed this video, I know I should say this at the beginning, but if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. I make no money off of this, but it just shows support, and I appreciate support in any form it comes in. So, you know, thank you very much if you do, and I appreciate the fact that you have watched this video and spent your time here. If this video helps, I always get people DM me that they watch the videos and it helps. Comment what about the videos you like hearing or what things you want to see, because that also helps me curate my reviews a little bit better and organize them a little bit better. So if there's things that you want to know more about or want to see more about, just let me know in the comments, because that allows me to also improve my reviews. And with that, once again, thank you all for watching. Check me out on Instagram, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will catch you all very soon. Take care.